All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to learn some French, but not just by memorizing lists. No, we're going to dive into a story. A story about a guy facing a super relatable modern-day problem. And as we follow him, we're going to pick up some really useful vocabulary. So, let's jump right in.
So, let me ask you this. Picture it. You just got a new place. Awesome, right? But you're also swamped with school or work, and you've got to plan a housewarming party. How do you even invite everyone these days? Do you make a bunch of calls? Send out a mass text? Our story kicks off with exactly that problem.
And we're going to see how our main character, Julien, handles it. All in French, of course. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll have a bunch of great new words under your belt.
Okay, Chapter 1. Let's meet our guy, Julien. He's got what you might call a first world problem. He's got a new apartment, he's got friends, but what he doesn't have is time. Not a single second to spare.
So for this first part of the story, we're really going to focus on two things. Words for everyday life, stuff about housing, and then the vocabulary you need for social events and invitations. Let's do it. Okay, so the story starts like this. Julien was completely débordé. It was the fin de la session, and he was buried under travaux. Let's pull that apart and see what those words really mean. Okay, first up, débordé. This is such a great word. It literally means overflowing. Think of a cup that's too full. That's your schedule. You're completely swamped. And this usually happens during the fin de la session, the end of the semester, right? When you're just drowning in travaux, which is the French word for your work or assignments.
And as if that wasn't enough, he had just moved into a new logement and needed to organize a Pendaison de crémaillère. So what are these two things? Let's find out.
All right, logement is a pretty straightforward word. It just means your housing, your place, your accommodation. But Pendaison de crémaillère, now that's a fun one. It's a housewarming party. And a little trivia for you, it literally translates to the hanging of the pot hanger. It's an old tradition from back in the day for when you moved into a new home.
So Julien turns to his coloc and says he's just too occupé to call everybody. His solution? He's going to send a courriel to invite all his friends. Now, I want you to really focus on that word occupé because it's important. Okay, this is super important. Débordé and occupé are not the same thing. Look, occupé just means you're busy. You've got stuff to do, but you can manage. Débordé, on the other hand, means you are totally, completely swamped. You can't take on one more thing. So think of it this way. Julien was débordé because of all his schoolwork, which in turn made him too occupé to sit down and make a bunch of phone calls. See the difference? One is, I have a lot to do. The other is, I'm drowning. So let's put it all together. Julien's coloc, that's his roommate, is going to help him send a courriel, an email, to inviter everyone to the party. Simple enough. Now all he needs are their email addresses.
All right, on to Chapter 2. So Julien has his plan, but of course it can't be that easy, right? A new problem pops up, and it's a very modern one, a really tricky email address. This is where things get interesting.
So, what are we focusing on now? We're still talking about social events, for sure, but we're also going to get into the nitty-gritty of some email and technology words. You'll see why in a second.
So what's the big occasion anyway? Well, it turns out Julien wanted to celebrate not just the new apartment, but also his anniversary and the fin de l'année. We're talking about a massive fête here.
Okay, this is the good stuff. Célébrer is pretty easy. It means to celebrate. And he's got 3 reasons to party. The new apartment, his anniversaire, which is his birthday, and the fin d'année, the end of the year. You put all that together and you get one giant fête, which is, of course, a party.
All right, time to get a little technical. Let's break down how you say the parts of an email address in French. That little underscore symbol, that's a barre de soulignement. The at symbol is called arrobas. A dot is just a point, and a hyphen is a trait d'union. Now, here's Julien's big problem. He can't remember if his friend Sophie's email has a hyphen or an underscore. Uh-oh. But he takes a guess and sends the invites out. Success! He tells everyone they can venir anytime after 8 p.m. And he adds a little note. If you get lost finding the Immeuble, just appelez me.
So let's quickly cover those last few words. Venir just means to come. The Immeuble is the apartment building itself. And if all else fails, they can appeler him, which means to call. Seems like he's got all his bases covered. Or does he?
And just like that, the night of the party has arrived. Chapter 3 is all about the good stuff, the feast, the atmosphere, everything you need for an awesome get-together.
So in this part, we're going to be learning words all about food and the things you do at a party, plus a couple more words about homes.
So let's picture it. The story says they didn't live in a big maison, but their app was cozy. Julien had prepared plenty of things to Grignoter, and the table was full of chips, fromage, and pâté. He also told guests to bring whatever they wanted to boire or apporter. Wow, okay, there's a lot in there. Let's break that down.
Okay, first let's talk about the place. A maison is a house, and app is just short for apartment, or apartment. Easy. Now the food. Grignoter is a fantastic verb. It means to snack or to nibble. And what are they snacking on? Well, things like chips, fromage, cheese, and pâté. And finally, the drinks. Guests were told they could apporter, which means to bring whatever they wanted to boire, or to drink. Sounds like a good party.
All right, here we are at the final chapter. The house is full, the party's going strong, but there's one more little lesson our friend Julien is about to learn.
So guests are starting to arrive. They're all saying, "We love where you habite." And then Sophie shows up. She's laughing and she says, "You put a trait d'union instead of a barre de soulignement." Aha, there it is, the big reveal.
So first, that new word the guests used, habiter, means to live, as in, I live in this city. But the real punchline, the whole point of the story, is that Julien mixed up the trait d'union, the hyphen, with the barre de soulignement, the underscore. Such a tiny little digital error, but it almost caused a big problem.
So there you have it. A simple typo almost wrecked the whole party. But hey, we learned a ton of new words from Julien's little adventure, right? Let's do a super quick recap.
Okay, so we started with Julien being totally débordé, or overwhelmed. He had to send a courriel, an email, for his Pendaison de crémaillère, his housewarming party. His big mistake was confusing a barre de soulignement, an underscore, with a hyphen. But in the end, it all worked out, and everyone got to grignoter or snack and have a good time.
So I'll leave you with this question. You now have the vocabulary to talk about being busy, to throw a party, to invite your friends over. So, what are you going to use it for? What will you celebrate? The language is yours to use now, so go have some fun with it.